Always with a brief lesson overview. We're going to talk about the rules of doubling final consonants and the rules of dealing with final E's in words, including silent E's. Then we're going to do a little practice. You're going to figure out which words are spelled correctly. And we're going to end, as always, with a list of ways to improve your spelling. All right, doubling final consonants. Here is the problem. English uses the Roman alphabet. The Roman alphabet the Roman language, Latin language, had its own set of plurals and rules for adding suffixes and things like that, and they don't work so well when you attach those to English words. So we had to come up with all kinds of crazy spelling things to get us to pronounce words correctly in English because we were using someone else's alphabet. One of those problems arises when we have final consonants. English adds suffixes, new endings, to words in order to alter their meanings. Words with single consonants as their final letters can be a problem here. Thus, we double the final consonant before adding a suffix under certain circumstances. Why is it a problem? Because if we don't double the final consonant, very often that means that the final vowel in the word suddenly becomes long and it sounds really strange. I'll demonstrate. You double the final consonant before adding a suffix when the suffix begins with a vowel. So ing, ed, age, er, ence, ance, and al. So, for example, hit becomes hitter because without the T it would be hiter, and then everyone would be confused. Occur becomes occurrence, stop becomes stoppage, and run becomes running. Again, because if you didn't double the N, then it would be runing, and then you are ruining, or writing in an ancient Norse script. And then everyone just gets confused. Rule number 2, you do this when the last syllable of the word is accented and ends in a single consonant preceded by a vowel sound. So begin becomes beginning. Begin, gin is the emphasized syllable in begin. And if you got rid of that N, it would suddenly become beguining. Very confusing. Similarly, incur becomes incurred, and remit becomes remittance. Doubled consonant in each case. All right. So, now that we've talked about final consonants, what's all this fuss about final E's? Well, final E's are very often silent. And unfortunately, when you stick a suffix on the end, sometimes they stop being silent, and you have a real problem. So, there are 3 possibilities when adding a suffix to a word ending with a silent E, at least if you're using regular forms. When you're adding a suffix that begins with an owl, like able, ing, ed, or drop the silent E. So advance becomes advancing, large becomes larger. This is especially important because if we did L-A-R-G-E-E-R, it would become largier, and everyone would be totally confused. And move becomes movable. Now, there is an exception to this. When a final E is preceded by a soft G or C, that's a G that goes J instead of G, and a C that goes S instead of K, or when the final E is preceded by a long O, the E is kept to maintain proper pronunciation. So, courageous keeps the E because otherwise it becomes courageous, and we all get confused. Changeable keeps the E because otherwise it becomes changable, and then we're all confused. And noticeable keeps the E because otherwise it becomes noticable, and then we're all back in the 14th century. All right. There are 3 possibilities. Again, there are 3 possibilities, so let's look at the other 2. Possibility number 2. When you are adding a suffix that begins with a consonant such as full, less, lie, meant, or ness, keep the final E. So amuse becomes amusement because there's your consonant. Suspense becomes suspenseful. Like becomes likeness. Hope becomes hopeful. An exception to this, by the way, is the word judgment. Judgment never ever has an E in here. Never ever put it in there. You will look like a moron. I'm not even kidding. Now, 3rd possibility. If a final silent E is preceded by another vowel, drop the E when adding any ending. Because otherwise you're going to end up with 3 vowels in a row, and people are going to make really funny noises trying to read it. So argue becomes argued. You drop the E and add ed. And argument. True becomes truly. You drop the E and add ly. Because otherwise it, just truly. All right. So, let's do some practice. Take a look at these sentences. Each of these sentences has at least one misspelled word, and with it, the correctly spelled version. Your job is to tell which is which. So, I am relying on your guidance. Having a roommate saves money on expenses. I don't know the reason for my dismissal. Let us hope there is no recurrence of this sad event. Quit making those defamatory or defamatory remarks. Socrates spoke about living a virtuous life. In King Lear, the king weeps over the lifeless body of his daughter Cordelia. Those words are bravely spoken. And think carefully before you try waging war. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. You ready? Here are the answers. I am relying on your guidance. This time you dropped the E because you had vowel, consonant, and then silent E, and then you had a suffix beginning with a vowel, and it was all just going to get too complicated. Having a roommate, you doubled the consonant, saves money on expenses. I don't know the reason for my dismissal. We kept the double consonant on the end there. Let us hope there is no recurrence, again a doubled consonant of the sad event. Quit making those defamatory remarks, because otherwise we end up with the EA and that just makes people go weird. Socrates spoke of living a virtuous life, because otherwise you would have virtuous, V-I-R-T-U-E-O-U-S, and that is just too many vowels together for English. In King Lear, the king weeps over the lifeless body of his daughter Cordelia. We keep the E in this case, because otherwise this becomes lithless, and again, we're all confused. Those words are bravely spoken. The E is necessary to keep the A long, because otherwise it becomes bravely spoken. And finally, think carefully before you try waging war. We just don't need the silent E, so we drop it. All right, here are some ways to improve your spelling better than memorizing any set of rules. First and foremost, read. Read anything. Read cereal boxes, read internet articles, read Facebook posts, although please try to read Facebook posts by people who can actually spell. The more practice you have reading correctly spelled words, the better you'll be at catching incorrectly spelled ones when you see them. You'll look at the word and go, that's not right, and then you'll feel very smart. Second, if you get tired of reading or you don't like reading, play word games like Scrabble and Words with Friends. Do word puzzles like crosswords and jumbles that emphasize getting the letters in the correct order. Next, you can use mnemonics, memory tricks, to help you remember tricky spelling rules. My favorite is to remember that the word weird violates that I before E except after C rule, so I remember that it is spelled weirdly. It violates that rule in a weird way, which is why it's weird. How many ways can I say weird in one sentence? Let's find out. No. Next, when you write with a word processing program like Microsoft Word, or even when you write in an email program like Gmail, keep the spell check turned on. Watch for that little red squiggle to turn up under your words. You'll soon get a sense of which words you most commonly misspell, and eventually how to spell them correctly. However, when you do this, keep a dictionary handy because spell check is incredibly stupid and can be wrong. And finally, most importantly, read. And that's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com.